Hello, I'm Joe Walensky, Program Manager for the ConveyUX conference, and that'll be coming up in January in Seattle. And I'm speaking with several of the speakers who will be presenting their ideas at the event. And today I'm talking with Sam Ladner from Microsoft. Hello, Sam.
Hi Joe, how's it going?
It's going pretty well. Where are you speaking to us from today?
From the beautiful Bellevue, I'm in the Lincoln Square office of Microsoft.
Oh, Lincoln Square. All right. Well, Sam, I know you're a senior researcher at Microsoft. You also recently, this past year, published your book, Practical Ethnography. So, congratulations on that.
Thank you.
And I just wanted to find out a little bit about the types of things that you're working on. So, what are some of the things that you're involved with right now?
Well, right now I'm really focusing on productivity, mobile productivity in particular. So some of the questions I'm looking at are around mobile first world. What does that mean? And how can we reinvent productivity in a mobile first world?
And so, how's that manifesting itself into various projects that you're working on? How does your expertise fit into that?
Well, before I joined Microsoft, I studied productivity for a really long time. I studied it in many different ways, econometrically, which I don't recommend. I studied it from a conceptual perspective, and I studied it from a field-based research perspective. So that's kind of what I'm focusing on now, is to bring real productivity scenarios that are actually already happening in broken and painful ways, bringing those alive, taking them from the field and bringing them internally.
And so, what do those scenarios look like? What types of things are you putting together to be able to gain a better understanding about your customers?
Well, some of the things that we, in the past, say, actually probably 2 years, some of the stuff that I've been looking at specifically has been around, now that we're fully cross-platform, we've got bring your own device happening into the enterprise. That's causing some challenges for not just from the IT management side, but also from the user side, obviously. That's one thing I'm looking at a lot. Another type of thing that I've been focusing on a little bit is now that mobile is pretty much cemented in everyday life, we're only actually just starting to realize that we don't have a really good set of understandings as to what that means for real enterprise use. My past research has been focusing a lot on before I joined Microsoft, on the life side of smartphone usage. Now I'm focusing more on the work side, and I'm going to try to put those two things together.
Uh, do you work with both the consumer side and enterprise side of things?
Yeah, I do. Lately, I've been focusing more on the enterprise side of things. It's a really understood area. It's actually a lot easier, I think, for a lot of us to go out and find a bunch of consumers to do research with. It's a lot harder to do it inside enterprises, and it takes a lot of time and energy. But it's so important because we honestly, the entire enterprise is completely changed. And we don't have good, thick description as to how it's changed and what's been happening. So that's what I've been focusing on more.
And that was one of the things that I was interested when you mentioned you were working with that is that so much of what we do and seems to be with consumers at the front end of working with the products. So as you've gotten involved in working with enterprise organizations, what's been different about the types of work that you do?
Well, the primary difference is always about access. With consumers, they usually have control, obviously, of their own homes, of their cars. They can offer you access to even to their garages. I mean, lots of different places where consumers will let you go. When you start doing enterprise work, the biggest challenge is being able to get behind closed doors. So that's really difficult, and every productivity researcher probably would tell you the same thing. And so we can do a lot of remote interviewing, and we can go to people's conference rooms occasionally, and maybe we can do some online surveys. But it's so it's there's no replacement for behind closed doors and understanding what real people are doing in their actual offices. So that's the biggest difference, I would say, between the two.
And then once you're able to have that access, do you find that things tend to just proceed in a similar way to working with consumer projects?
I would say they usually do. It's kind of surprising. Actually, in a project that I did before I joined Microsoft, I actually studied lawyers and their use of smartphones. And access was a huge problem for me with lawyers because of confidentiality, lawyer-client confidentiality. And I discovered that that was actually not as big a deal in practice as it was when people were talking to me about possibly participating. It turns out there's a whole lot of stuff that happens in law that is very mundane, isn't confidential, isn't that important. And you only recognize that when you spend a little bit of time with people. So that's actually something that I've noticed over and over again in the enterprise. You think it's just like the participant thinks it's going to be, a very difficult experience for them to have this iconographer alongside of them, but it turns out they just ignore you after a while, just like consumers do.
And so then, just things that you're interested in generally. Are there any particular new design thoughts that you have, or new techniques that you're particularly interested in?
I am really very interested in cross-platform, and I'm thinking about it really, really differently, I think, than just like, oh, let's have an Android version and let's have an iOS version and then a Windows version. I'm actually really interested in the glue of what's underneath all of that. So let's say that we have, it goes without saying these days that cross-platform really is very important. So, okay, so we're gonna have to do an Android version, we're gonna do an iOS version, and maybe we're gonna do a Windows Phone version, and then maybe a web version, some kind of web version. I'm actually most interested in the glue that kind of puts all those things together. How can we make sure that we make good glue so that, I know this isn't probably going to happen, but let's say that there was a new mobile platform that suddenly became very big. Can we tack that onto our glue? Can we make good glue? I'm really interested in the good glue.
Okay. All right. Well, I want to also ask you about your session that you're going to have at the conference. I'm sure you still have a lot of things to do in terms of setting that up. But I was just want to see if there might be any things you might want to share now, just about your thoughts about what you wanted to talk to the attendees about.
Yeah, you're right. I do have work to do. Thank you for reminding me. I'll make sure that it's going to be ready in time. But if you're a participant and you're interested in perhaps coming to ConveyUX and you want to know, should I come to this session? What I'm going to be talking about is going to be not technology focused. I'm not going to be talking about technology. I'm going to be talking about humans and how, it goes without saying now, it's table stakes. The technology has to work. It has to be stable. It has to be pretty usable. But now we've gotten to the point where that is just a given. We expect that. How do you get to that next point where you have a connection with people, with your users, your customers? That's what I'm going to be talking about. I'm going to be talking about a concept called accompaniment and how embracing that in your practice, whether you're a designer, you're a researcher, or maybe you're a product owner, embracing this idea of accompaniment is a technique that you can use to really build human technology.
All right. Well, I'm looking forward to that, and people in the meantime should definitely check out your new book on practical ethnography. So thanks for taking a few minutes to talk with me today, and we'll see you in a couple of months.
Okay, thanks, Joe.
All right. Thank you, Sam.